Good morning. Good morning. We have 3 minutes and 30 seconds, so you might want to make your way to your table. I know the vendors over there are pretty full, but if you would start getting to your table, that would be great. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning and welcome everyone. It's so great to see so many of you here this morning. It's wonderful. We had 200 reservations for this. So you are really in for a treat today. But I'm Beth Epley, Director of Women's Ministry. But I would like for you to reach down into your pocket, purse, or for your cell phone. And if you would silence your cell phone, please, I would appreciate it. So I want to give a special thank you to our sponsors, which many of you have already visited in the gathering place, and you'll have more time to visit the tables, and you will be hearing from our sponsors, and they have great resources for us, so you'll want to be sure to check that out. We will be taking a break around 11 a.m. to 11:15. Lunch will be served from 12 to 12:45. So before we go to our workshop, let's go to prayer. Dear Lord, today we give you our hearts, minds, and our lives. We pray that you will deepen our comprehension, broaden our thinking, and transform our understanding of what we are about to learn. We ask that you shower our speaker today as she shares her knowledge and experiences, and that we put into practice what we learn. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, it gives me great pleasure to introduce my dear friend of 10 years. And she is a dementia expert, Shelley Drews. Shelley is the Regional Outreach and Education Specialist for Heritage Communities, and she is also owner of Help My Senior. Shelley created and implemented Help My Senior Caregiver School, which is one of a kind, and you will be hearing more about that. She received her undergrad degree at the University of Arizona and has her MBA in healthcare management. Shelley has trained with the best, the world-renowned Teepa Snow. So if you would please join me and watch the screen at this time.
This morning, Arizona is bracing for what's being called a silver tsunami. It's a term that's being used by the healthcare industry right now to describe this wave of seniors we're going to be seeing could soon be facing some serious health issues like dementia. So what does this mean for your family, your loved ones who are getting older? And joining us this morning is Shelley Drews from Health My Senior. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So tell me about this silver tsunami.
Oh, yes, it's a very scary time right now. We have a lot of people who are aging into their senior years.
Sure.
And so right now in Arizona, Alzheimer's is the 4th leading cause of death, and we are not prepared for this. We have 1 in 3 seniors that are being diagnosed with dementia, and when I say senior, that means ages 65 years and older.
Oh my goodness.
And we aren't even including the people who are younger. We have a lot of people who are in their 40s that have been coming to us and needing to have services. And so this is something that we're not ready to deal with, and I have watched so many different families who have come and asked, what do? I don't even know where to go, including senior professionals that just, when it happens to you personally, you're just in an entirely different world. The devastation of watching your loved one who is going away before your eyes. And so our mission is to be able to empower the families to know beforehand what it is that they can do so that they're prepared for this, because it's not an easy journey and not one that anybody should do alone either.
So please help me welcome Shelley Drews.
Hello. Well, I'm so excited to be here. Can everybody hear me okay? Wonderful. So I wanted to find out first, how many of you have a loved one living with dementia currently or in the past, if you'll raise your hand? Okay. How many of you are concerned that you have somebody, whether yourself or somebody that may be living with dementia currently? Raise your hand. Okay. I have some laughs because they don't want to necessarily raise their hand if it's them. I know the feeling of that. So I am Shelley Drews, and I wanted to share a little bit about who I am because, yes, I'm an educational a specialist with dementia. I've been doing this for 30 years. I have run memory cares, I have owned care homes, and I've been in different pieces and parts of the industry. However, I am also a family member. My grandfather just passed away last month of dementia, and I do have some concerns for other family members that I won't mention because this is being recorded. And so, People always say when you specialize in a certain area, like you're always super focused and thinking that everybody has it. That really isn't the case. But that being said, dementia is such a huge epidemic right now, right? We didn't used to hear about this all the time. Before it was that we were maybe senile, right? And at the time, way back when, we only had the option to go into skilled nursing homes. How many of you know times have changed and it is not as scary as what it used to be? Because if you don't know that, I'm here to give you hope today. And part of that hope is having an understanding and education of what we're really working with. So my style, just so y'all know, is that I am interactive. I welcome questions. We have very short time for the amount of material that I hope to cover today. And so, but if there are questions that you have as we go on break, in the back corner, you can write your questions down and Beth will collect those because I want you to walk away knowing the answers to the questions that you came in with today, okay? So we're gonna go over the truths about dementia, but as much as we can with regards to what we have today. So the only little fun thing I want to share, because it's near and dear to my heart, is that I also volunteer with animals. So many of you came and saw my little dog Miracle over there. But on the weekends, I'm with bears and lions and javelina, all sorts of fun things. And so I just love life. And I feel like, you know, in the world that we're living in, and because we're in a church, I can freely talk about God, which excites me. You know, God is about love. God is about life. Everything he created is alive, including the rocks that have molecular movement within them. And so despite the disease of dementia, I want you to understand that there's still life within this disease. It's painful. It's very, very difficult because we're losing people, whether it be ourselves or our loved one, right in front of us. But I want you to change a mind frame of recognizing that there's beauty in the moments. And we have to adjust our thoughts with this because there's a stigma with dementia that you get a diagnosis and life is gone. But it doesn't necessarily work that way. There is a progression, but there's so much more to it. So as we go through things today, and I'm sorry, I've got to figure out how to get my little thing to work here. You'll see up here some of the reasons why I'm doing this. I have always been drawn to seniors. There's an innocence that I've always loved, and I've had a protective response to them. And so I have always, as early as I could, work with the nursing homes volunteering. And little did I know that my grandparents, and at that time senile is one thing, but little did I know that this would be my profession. I just feel like this is where the Lord has brought me to and my passion with it, because he gives us all a purpose and a passion. With that said, when we're talking about dementia and with that diagnosis, we still have a purpose and we still have a passion that is within that looks different, that as family members, we have to adjust our expectations of. And when we do that, we're able to have more enjoyment with them and to walk along the path and that journey a little bit easier. And so we are going to be talking about that a little bit. But what you see up here is a picture of my grandma during COVID. She was looking through the window, excited to see us, waving hello. And she helped provide care for my grandfather that was living with dementia. His was vascular dementia. So how many of you know that there are different types of dementia? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you would say 10 to 20 different types of dementia? Raise your hand. How many of you would say around 50 types of dementia? 100. Ooh, we got some hand raisers. How about there's over 120 different types of dementia, and that's the truth. Okay? Now, you hear about Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is the #1 type of dementia, and that's really the majority of what is spoken about until we have people like Robin Williams, who's passed away of Lewy body dementia. So we're going to talk about some of the higher, the more expected types of dementia, but there's a lot of pieces to that as well. We have another picture up there of my mother-in-law that's in the pink sweater. So she had dementia, but her dementia was caused by a brain tumor. So this was what we would actually call a reversible dementia because we did surgery, we took the tumor out, and for a period of time we were able to have her back with us again. So dementia is a very widespread thing, and dementia is like an umbrella. So I want you to picture underneath that Alzheimer's, Lewy body, Parkinson's, all the things that come with it, okay? And so I often get asked the question if it really matters what type of dementia somebody has. And when I was running a assisted living community, most of the time, I'll be honest with you, we have people that will come in and the diagnosis that's written is dementia with behaviors. Well, that's like saying they have cancer and that's it. We need to know the type of dementia just as much as we need to know the type of cancer, because our care plan is very, very different for each person. And we cannot plan the best plan unless we really understand what that type of dementia is. And so we'll cover some of those things today as well. So look at these pictures behind me and tell me, what does dementia truly look like? Do you recognize dementia looking at these pictures? No? So dementia doesn't really look like anything. But what I want you to know is that that beautiful lady in her wedding dress, she has dementia. The gentleman in the plaid shirt, he has dementia. That young boy with his mom, he has dementia. There's no age. Age is now removed. And that's for a variety of reasons. You know, Alzheimer's specifically is the highest risk as we continue to age. Every year we get older. We are more at risk for Alzheimer's. But now we have these other dementias that are finally being identified. And that's in 40s, on average 40s to 60s for younger onset. But then we also have the younger children who are dealing with this, and you'll see why. So my question to you is, what is dementia? What do you think of when you hear dementia? And I want you just to talk at your tables for 1 minute about when you hear the word dementia, what does that mean to you? Go ahead and start. Fifteen more seconds. And stop. So if you will yell out, what are some of the things when you think about dementia, what comes to mind?
Denial.
Fear, denial, depression, confusion, comprehension, Yes. Anger, memory loss, scary, fear, a lot of fear, absolutely. Okay? What's that? These are all very, very normal things that we think about. And typically when we say the word dementia, what we do think is just memory loss. And what we don't recognize is that it's so much more than that. And those of you who have dealt with this know. So dementia is not Alzheimer's, and it is not memory problems. It's actually brain failure. Okay? The person's brain is dying. And that's when two active parts of the brain are dying. And so what we have is that it's a progressive disease, no matter what type of dementia it is. It's chronic, and it is terminal. And as of right now, as you know, we don't have a cure. My hope is that we find one. We have people all over the world that are looking to find some resolution for this, but there's still so much unknown about these diseases, and so it's difficult. And it makes me think of like when we were going through the AIDS, HIV, epidemic, but we're doing better now. We finally figured out to where people can have a quality of life. And I want you to really be honest with yourself, do you believe that you can have a quality life with the diagnosis of dementia? Praise the Lord. Thank you. Majority of the people will say no. Majority of the people say no. Because what they envision is at the end of life, where they're stuck and they can't move and they might be drooling. That's what they envision. But that's this part of life, right? And the thing is that we don't know what we're going to get diagnosed with through life if we even have the opportunity, right? I mean, people die of car accidents every day. So we still have opportunity and a blessing of living life, and God gives us every day, He has all of that laid out for us, in my belief. But what we want to really do is identify today, I want to show you pictures of the brain because I want you to understand what's happening. This is one of those things that you can't see. So at least if somebody's got a broken arm, we can look at them and we see cast. But families in particular really struggle because you can't see the damage that's going on underneath it. So when you look at these brains, what's different with the Alzheimer's brain? Right, it's shrinking. Okay, so that means that function is going to be very different. So as it's shrinking, you have cell death, and you have an entire transition of the brain. But there are some differences on the type of dementia that it is. So for Alzheimer's, it starts in the hippocampus, and that's where our memory is. So one of the first signs that we'll see with Alzheimer's is memory loss. And other types of dementia, it may start in the frontal lobe, and then it'll progress differently. And so that's the basic idea and understanding the differences of dementia, along with different causes, okay? And again, we're going to go into that. But what was interesting to me is that, so these are the top causes of death, and it's small, so I'm going to read this to you. The number one cause of death is heart disease, okay? The second one is cancer. And look what jumped up on there. COVID is the third cause of death in the United States. Then we have accidents, we have COPD, and then we have Alzheimer's as number 6. But I don't want you to be fooled, because Alzheimer's is actually the 4th leading cause of death in the nation. And that's just Alzheimer's. We're not including all the other types of dementia, okay? And I want you to understand how broad this is, because if you're not dealing with this today, and even if you are, it's 1 in 3 seniors that are dying of dementia. That means, and I'm sorry, this is kind of a Debbie Downer thing, that at least 1, if not 2 people at your table will pass of dementia. And these are the statistics, y'all, that we can't get away from. And so we have to be mindful of this for ourselves as much as we do our friends and our neighbors and the people we work with, because it's just prevalent. So dementia kills more people than those who die of breast cancer and prostate cancer combined. That blows my mind. That is a lot of people. And the financial deficit in what we're going through, dementia costs the nation $321 billion in 22. And that's not including the caregivers taking care of their loved ones that aren't getting paid. And it's only going to progress. So, you know, the news can sometimes mess things up a little bit. So the truth is that 6.5 million are currently living with Alzheimer's, specifically Alzheimer's, and it's expected to go to 12 million by 2050, which means, of course, the costs of it are also going to be continuing. But Alzheimer's is the only one on the top 10 that can't be prevented or cured. And so I have a screen, which shows you, and I'm sorry it's hard to see, but basically what this is showing you is that this is for 2019 to 2020. So breast cancer deaths have been reduced by 1.1%. We also had prostate cancer reduced. I'm sorry, those two increased by that. Heart disease, stroke, and HIV, those have all been reduced. So, and HIV by 65%. So we've made some significant improvements on that. But what you see in the purple is the increase of 145% for those dying of Alzheimer's. Just Alzheimer's, again. So that's like just breast cancer, and all of the other ones are being ignored. So these numbers are much grander. Most people will only talk about that, though. So this is a scary question for a lot of people. I want you to stand up if you've lost your keys. Ever. You stood up really fast back there. Yeah. Oh, wow. Y'all, we are in church. Are you all being honest? I can't imagine that not every one of us have lost our keys or our phone, glasses. Oh yes, or talking on the phone, and I can't find my phone, and here I'm talking on it. Yeah. I can't remember exactly. Exactly. So here's my question, you guys. And many of you stood up, and many of you just stayed hidden, but would have stood up, and I see you all too. Do you think that means that you could possibly have dementia? Is that a sign? A lot of people are afraid, and they are afraid that it is. But let me tell you the difference, because we are going to talk about normal aging. So with normal aging, it's normal to have memory loss. It's normal to have missing information, missing words, maybe not remembering the name of somebody that is an acquaintance of an acquaintance kind of a thing. What's different is, if I ask you, where did you find your keys? What is a normal progression to find them? Let me ask you that first. And I ask my husband too, yes. You ask your loved one or anybody around you, where did I put my keys, or where did I put my phone? Whatever it is, yes. And I say, continue to do that. It works really well usually. They get used to us losing it. So, in fact, you guys, and this is just between you and me, but my 5-year-old, she ran out after me. Mommy, here's your phone, while I was sitting in my car this morning. My 5-year-old is trained. That's scary. But it's okay. I pray a lot about that. So when we're talking about relocating things, in our mind, we go back and we say, where was I? Oh, I went to the grocery store, and I came through this door, through the garage, and I set my stuff on this counter. Oh, I went to the bathroom. And you start to follow things around, right? But what happens with dementia? I don't know where I was. You just don't know, okay? Or you don't even know that you lost them until somebody brings it to you, like this morning. I had no idea yet. And after she brought me my phone, by the way, I had to go back inside for the 6th time, and that time was to find my keys. Yes, you can pray for us now. So when we're working with normal aging, I want you guys to know that there is normal progression of slowness. So it's like those toys that you have to twist the little thingy on the side, and it gets the energy going. You wind it up, and then it slows down a little bit. Yes. And so you have to keep on winding it up. But as we get older, our brains slow down a little bit. And it's natural and normal that the volume of our brain actually decreases by 5% every decade. Okay? That's normal. So just so you know, there are a lot of physiological changes that take place with that. But it is okay. It is okay. So, slower thinking, I'm going to tell you that's the normal, okay? But not being able to think is a different deal. You can't figure things out. You go to do something and you forget what you do, that's okay. But if you go to do something and you just cannot figure out what step it is that you do it, that's an executive functioning loss. So as an example, doing the dishes. At your table, I want you to talk about what are the steps that have to take place in order for you to be able to do the dishes. Go ahead and talk. $15 seconds. Shelley, yes. And stop. Okay, so who would like to share the steps of doing the dishes? Yeah? Ooh. So she started at a good place, which was noticing, ooh, there's dirty dishes, and then bringing it to the sink in order to put them into the dishwasher. Good. Oh, I love that. So she just gave us a secret. So she said as soon as she empties the dishes, that she puts the soap in for the next time, so that she knows next time if they're clean or not and what to do. So I love that. Thank you. Hello, Miracle. He has a little bit to say about the dishes, too. You can take them out. Okay. So, so again, there's a difference being able to go in and to do them, and then the other version of it, which would be dementia, would be, oh, first, I don't know the difference between a dirty dish and a clean dish. That's number one. Number two, how do I get that stuff to flow out? The blue stuff? Oh, water. How do I get that? Okay. And then the soap. Wonder what that is and where that's at. Ooh, that looks really interesting to me. But what do I do with it? Do I put it on my head? Is that, oh, I had to wash my hair. There's distractions. So every little thing, every little step is a major task. Because I don't know how to turn on the water. Or I don't know what I need to do first. And so families will get frustrated because their loved one will go and do the dishes, and all they're doing is taking a dirty dish and they're putting it up into the cabinet and thinking it's clean. Or they'll get the soap on it and then put it in the cabinet. And the family is frustrated. What is wrong with you? Come on. Didn't your mama teach you how to do the dishes? How do you think the person with dementia feels? I don't know. I mean, yeah, of course Mama taught me. Of course I know how to do the dishes. I just did it, didn't you see? Seriously? That's what you call doing the dishes? Then I don't want you here. I don't want your help. Fine. And the person disappears. Let me ask you, if that scenario takes place, what kind of day do you think, as a caregiver or as the person living with dementia, is going to have? Horrible. Horrible. As a family member, I want to just put this out there right now. As a family member versus a professional, because I'm in the professional world as well, but I'm primarily in the professional world. It is different when it's a loved one that you have that relationship with. Do you know why? You have expectations. You've had a relationship for all these years. And so you're expecting that that is going to be continuing. And out of fear, you guys said fear. I heard fear many times when we were talking about what's dementia. Out of fear, we react. We react to the things that don't make sense to us. And we have things that have to be done. And so, come on, we need to get it done, and we become task-oriented as opposed to person-oriented, which is where the heart and love comes in. And we're going to talk more about that. You know, people have always asked me, what's the trick? What's the trick? Shelley, you have the hardest job in the whole world. No, I have the most blessed job. Because the trick, if there is such a thing, is about love. Everything is about love and compassion to the soul of the individual that we're providing care for. But it's harder to get to that place with our loved ones. And that's nothing to feel guilty about. Because we do. I do. With my grandfather. I felt it. I still feel it during his passing. And this is what I do for a living. But I want you to be aware of these pieces so that you don't have to walk a harder walk than what it's going to be. Because any walk with dementia is going to be hard. That's the truth. But if you have knowledge, if you have an understanding, it allows you to move through it differently, where it won't be quite as heavy and difficult. So when we're talking about getting a diagnosis for dementia, People ask me, can you go get a blood test and will that be it? No, unfortunately not. Part of the problem with getting our diagnoses is that the insurance doesn't like to pay for what would really be needed, which is a PET scan. Okay? Used to be $33,000. Now, even with insurance, it's $3,300. So, yes, we gather information, but the number one way of identifying dementia is through the loved one sharing what they witness and what they see. And so, when we go to the neurologist or to a PCP, but mind you, just so you know, statistics show that 60% of PCPs, the primary care doctors, are uncomfortable even diagnosing dementia because they say they don't know how. Okay? So please do not rely on your primary care doctor. Do not. You have to find a dementia expert, a neurologist. There's teams of people that you need to create to surround you in order for this to be an easier journey, okay? Some PCPs might be wonderful. I'm not saying different than that, but you need a team of people. So they will do a 4-hour neurocognitive test, okay? They will also, and so just so you know, I did this testing. I have a traumatic brain injury, so I actually do deal with a lot of memory issues, and had a concussion. And so those of us who've had concussions are more at risk to have dementia, just as an FYI. Anytime we fall and hit our head, we are more at risk for having dementia. So falls is a really big, scary word in my world. Okay, we have to be very careful about that. But at any rate, so along with that, they'll do an MRI, a CT, a lot of those standards, and part of that is to rule things out. So I do caregiver training for professionals as well as families, and after I get done, my caregivers will come up to me and they will say, Shelley, I know I have dementia. I know it. Because we'll go through these lists. We go through, these are the symptoms and these are the things. And I'll say, okay, take a breath. How much stress are you in? How many of you have stress in life? Okay, so some of y'all did not raise your hand for losing your keys and now not for stress. This is concerning. We all have stress. We all have stress. What do we do with it? How do we relieve ourselves of the stress that we carry day to day? And the trauma that we carry through what we've experienced in life? Because almost all of us have had trauma. It affects the psyche within our brain, our soul, everything. And we have to process these things to get it off of us so we're not carrying those things with us. So stress is one thing. Another thing is, how are you sleeping? I have some people shaking their head, not so well. Either one, at night or during the day. I'm sorry, I hear your pain. Yeah. And you know, during sleep, what's so important about that is that's where you take your memories and you convert them so that they stay. Okay? And you detoxify your body. So if you're not sleeping, your body is not detoxifying. So that's another problem. Okay? So how many of you eat healthy? Good, I've got some hands raised. Good. Okay. So the Western diet, it's not looked upon so highly. And Arizona is one of the top states for having dementia. And they really believe that it is because of the Western diet and the food we're eating. But the challenge is this. You guys remember back in the day when they had good nutrition in the soil? Do we have that now? We don't. So where are we getting our nutrition from? It's got to be supplements. But let me ask you another question. for your supplements. Do you know how absorbent those nutrients really are? Right? We live in a world that's about product and money. And the sad thing is that a lot of these vitamins that we're taking, you guys, our body's not even able to absorb. So you might end up with 1% of what you're really needing to get. How many of you know about vitamin D? How important is this? Do you know in Arizona, D is in dog, yep, that in Arizona, we have the highest, how do I say this? We have the highest deficiency, thank you, of vitamin D in the world. Yes, because we hide from the sun. We hide from it. And that's where we get it, is in the sun. Okay? Vitamin B12, thyroid. You guys, I can go on and on and on. There are so many medical things in our body that could be creating dementia-like symptoms that's not dementia. And I want to share that because I want a little bit of the fear to go away. I have had people who have come into my memory care with diagnosed dementia that walked out and they moved back home, doing well. I have friends who have communities, care homes, so that's where you have a smaller group of people, up to 10 people, that have had people that have moved in, and by numbers of people moved back out, primarily because of hydration and nutrition and exercise. Okay? So there's a lot out there. And so I don't just take what the diagnoses are that come through, but really do an evaluation and make sure that we're looking at everything that needs to be looked at to see. Because if we can improve this piece over here where maybe we're sleeping better, is that going to help everything else? Absolutely. So what does depression look like? When you think of depression, what do you think of? Sadness, no activity, withdrawing, isolation, sleeping. What was it over here? Helplessness. So, with depression, are those symptoms different than with dementia? They're very similar. And I will tell you, very difficult to identify the difference. Okay? And what happens is depression gets missed in treating it. Because those living with dementia have these similar symptoms. Do you think having a dementia diagnosis might cause depression? Yeah. I just came from a conference with the best international dementia expert of the world, Teepa Snow. And at her conference, I was with about 10 people that have the young onset of Alzheimer's. And they're my age. I have to be honest with you. It hurt. It was really hard. Because I had to process, we were like the same. We were doing the same things, and then I would see just this little bit of, okay, I can see where, the disease is hitting them just that little bit. But it just was an element of reality for me, and I've had people of varying ages. We had, at Orchard Point of Terraza, we have 3 different communities that are here locally, but we have 14 in total. And we had a precious lady that was with us with frontotemporal dementia, and she did die by age of 52. There is a familiar gene in a lot of the dementias, and so it's also important to know what your history is with your bloodline. Okay? There are tests that you can also take to identify if you have some of these genes, and it's not for everybody. A lot of people wouldn't want to know, and that's okay too. But I'll talk about later some of the values in knowing what that is. But is dementia reversible? It depends, and it depends, is it a real dementia diagnosis? Because remember, all those things, if you don't sleep well for a day, you might look like you have dementia, or at night, whichever way that works, okay? If you have a thyroid deficiency, you may look like you and feel like you have dementia. Okay, so there's a lot of variations that are out there, like the tumor for my mother-in-law, right, that we removed. So there's a lot of things. But one thing I wanted to point out is dehydration. Ugh, how many of you really like to drink water? God bless you. I hate it. And that's a strong word. My receptionist, going back quite a few years, was pretty disturbed to see that I didn't drink water at all. And she told me, she said, Shelley, I'm going to bring you this water every day. And if you just start to drink it, just drink a little bit, you'll start to crave it. And sure enough, it worked. But then I got out of it, and so I need somebody to help me do that again. It's critical, especially for our joints and our organs. It affects everything. I want you to envision the gasoline in your car, and if that thickens up, how well is your car going to run? It doesn't. At some point it stops, and it's the same for dehydration, okay? Now, at the end of life, our bodies stop wanting food and water, and that's part of how God made it. When we stop wanting food and water, the body goes through a different transition to where it passes. And so we don't have time to go into that today, but when we're talking about the hospice side of things, that is something that when they get to that point, we do need to allow them to go through. Otherwise, we do make it more difficult if we're forcing food and water, and that's a whole different topic. But medications is another thing that can cause dementia-like symptoms. So delirium is something that also needs to be looked at. One of the most common things that we see with seniors is a UTI. Part because of dehydration, part because of how they're wiping, part is because they're not changing themselves as much, and they might, if they're incontinent, they might be sitting in the urine for too long. The wetness allows for the bacteria to crawl inside, and it's for men too. It goes both ways. But what are some of the symptoms of a UTI? An extreme bladder infection, absolutely, you can come to a place of hallucination. Typically, it's an extreme quick change. So if they are introverted, all of a sudden they're extroverted and they have a lot to say. They might be sweet as pie and now they're aggressive. It's not always the bad things. Maybe they're outgoing, but now they're very reserved. Any of those changes we need to look for, and we have to be careful about what's really going on to make sure we get antibiotics. And technology-wise, they're starting to look at some different options for what we can do with that. In fact, Vicki is here and is going to talk about some other options for some clinical trials that are really cool that have to do with UTIs as well. But fear, anxiety, hallucinations, all of that, it can be pretty extreme, and it can lead to death. And so that's one of the top things that we look for somebody living with dementia and just aging, period. So this is where we go into the irreversible dementias, okay? So this is where we have Alzheimer's, I told you, as the number one type. This picture right here is one of the young ladies I was telling you about that has the young onset of Alzheimer's. She's had it now for a few years where it's been diagnosed, but when do you think we can see symptoms of dementia? What's that? 7, 9? Absolutely. At least 20 years prior is what they say. So there'll be little symptoms that lead up to it, specifically for Alzheimer's, okay? So, I know I'm saying that a lot, but it's important to differentiate that. So for Alzheimer's, there are a couple different types. You can have, if you have an early onset, it's a quicker progression. If it's a late onset, it's 8 to 20 years of life. And it just depends on the individual. Everybody's journey looks very different, but what we do know is the idea of the stages that people go through. A lot of people will ask me what stage their loved one is in. I don't really go by that. Stages 1 through 8 or whatnot, because again, it can look very, very different. I've had people who have just lived and lived and lived that we didn't expect, and vice versa. So it's just about making sure that that quality of life in every moment, not day, every moment that they have is good, okay? What are some of the risk factors? So women, this is one of the ones that aren't so great. We are 2/3 of the population of those with Alzheimer's, okay? Black Americans are 2 times more likely to have it, and Hispanics are 1.5 times more likely to have it. So this is an unfortunate thing, but so education is another thing. So those who are less educated are more likely to have it, but why do you think that is? Isn't that weird? Yeah, it's about exercising the brain. So those who have been studying for a longer period of time, they've been exercising the brain, and the brain is no different than any other type of muscle. So I want you to stand up. Okay. So those of you who can stand up, if you need to sit down and do this, you can do that too. All I want you to do is to lift your arms up and punch your neighbor out. Up and punch your neighbor out. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Now add your knees up, down, up, down. It doesn't make sense because my up and down is only for the upper body. Down. Your knees are going to feel really good. Down, up, down. And we're going to do this for 15 more seconds. Down, up, down, up, down. And you're going to keep on going. And this is a little mild thing. We're going to do something different later on. And 3 more. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Those of you who were able to do that, how do you feel? Worn out. I heard better. Better. What's that? Invigorated, energized. So any difference for you? Not much. He needs to run a marathon in order for him to feel it, and that's cool. So here's the thing, and we're going to take a break, so you're welcome to stay standing. But so the thing with this is that when you do exercise, you are bringing nutrients to your brain. They did a study and where they were looking at those dying of Alzheimer's, and the autopsy showed, besides the brain, the heart was 99.9% affected with some kind of damage. And that was because they weren't getting enough nutrients and oxygen to the brain. So exercise is the #1 most important thing for you to do to prevent dementia and the progression of it. So we are going to go ahead and take a break. Have you learned anything new yet? Good, good. So we're going to go ahead and take a break, and then oh yes, if you have questions, write those on your pad, and then if you will give those to Beth, because again, I want to make sure I can address any questions. And then we will get started back in 15 minutes. So please feel free to visit with the vendors as well.
recognize her back.
Oh, hello. Okay, we're ready to get started, and I'm going to turn this back over to Shelley.
Okay, so wow, I have to tell you that I am overwhelmed in a good way, but I mean, there's a lot of questions. So here's the thing. This morning we already talked about a part 2. So we will have further discussion about making sure to do that. And there is on your table, there is a 2-day family caregiver training that I do that's free, that allows the hands-on practical components that we won't be able to, based on time, to get into today. So any of you who are dealing with a loved one, a friend, it doesn't matter. If you just want to come and get that more personalized education, then please make sure that you register for that so you can come and do it. It is from 9 to 3:30. I will do my very best to cover these questions, and some of it will be covered based on what I have that I'm going through right now. And so here we go. Okay. So when we talk about the different types of dementia, the second most common type is vascular. And I had quite a few of you that came and spoke with me and mentioned this. So vascular dementia is where you have a TIA. It's some kind of a blood clot in the brain, and you don't always know that it's happening. One of the signs and things that is different with vascular dementia is that the symptoms are completely different based on where the location of the blood clot is in the brain, okay? My grandfather had vascular dementia and Alzheimer's, so you can have multiple at the same time. And for him, it was a light switch. So it was on, he was normal, off, not a good day, on, off, all day long. And the thing that gets frustrating is that the families that I help think, he's just faking it. But it's not the case. It's just how the synapses are working within the brain, okay? And so now Lewy body, this is the one that we talked about with Robin Williams, okay? So you all heard about, he ended up taking his life. I do want to say on that, with regards to suicide, this is becoming more and more common, even within our communities, and it makes me really sad. And I think that part of the reason that this is happening is just because there is no hope and no support. And so when you come to these types of events, and my goal for you is to make sure that you are creating your toolkit and you're adding in the tools that you need for yourselves and your loved ones to be able to function through this. And nobody should do this journey alone. Nobody. Because you have to have, when I was in Africa, we went up, it's called the Impenetrable Forest, and we saw the gorillas up top, which was really amazing. But we literally had to crawl up the mountain on our hands and knees and have the guides with their machine guns, while they're holding the machine guns, trying to pull some of us, not me, but pull some of us that weren't so much in shape up the mountain or down the mountain, because it was needed. And I really think about that in relation to the journey that we take with dementia for the loved ones. Because there's days, whether we're living with it or whether we're caring for it, that we are going to crash. And you have to have in place the support needed for you on those days and during those times, because it is a difficult journey. There's, again, no way around that. But with Lewy body, this is caused by a Lewy body protein. So it's a different protein than Alzheimer's, which is called a beta amyloid, but that's not what matters today. You're going to have a lot more hallucinations, delusions. You're going to see things. And that is difficult. Because let me ask you a question. I want you to hold up your cups. Hold your cups up in the air. Thank you. Could I convince you that your cup is your cell phone? No, 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 no. That is not a drink. That is not your cup. Okay? Let's just get that clear. No. That is your cell phone. Yeah, okay. That's right. You just put that up to your ear. There's nothing I could do to convince you that that's a cell phone. Okay? Now, here's the thing. In reality, if you're the one living with dementia, and it truly is a cell phone, but you see it as a cup, what should my response be? Should it be to bring you back to reality? Am I teaching you? No. Now, a lot of times we think that. We think that our job is to correct it because maybe they'll remember it. But we're dealing with a different process in the brain. And so we have to be very mindful. There is a rule, the number one rule. Could someone close the door to the kitchen possibly? Thank you. Thank you. There's a number one rule, which is do not argue. We join them in their reality, okay? So if it's really a cell phone, but you think it's a drink, my response would be, oh, what are you drinking? Is it good? Is it refreshing? And you go with it. You join their reality, okay? So otherwise, what kind of day are you going to have? Pretty crappy. Yes. Uh-huh. Huh? Oh. Well, so that's a challenge. So her question was, if she really thinks it's a cup and she goes to put water on it, one of the big things that you can do is, you redirect. It's okay, Miracle. You redirect. You get their focus onto something different, okay? Because you don't want that to be underwater. And so you may say, oh, what kind of drink are you looking for? Can I help you? And try, never fight. You never ever, so this is an area that people really struggle with. How many of you, when you have something set in your mind that's right, that you have to do, are darn well gonna get that done? We as humans are task-oriented. And if I think there's a safety issue, or I'm gonna have something broken that's worth a lot of money, I am really going to be engaged in this process. But when we're working with dementia, whatever the situation is, we are jumping into that with them, and in the process, we are trying to redirect them. And typically, we can easily redirect them based on the likes. It's a process. So when you learn the tools, there's a process to be able to get their minds into a different place. So on a PET scan that I'll show you, we'll get to, because here it is, this PET scan. So what you see here is a picture of a normal brain, two different people, early Alzheimer's, late, and then child. What do you see in this? What do you notice in this? A lot of shrinkage, yes. And late Alzheimer's and the child's brain look very similar, do they not? And so the glucose is not working through the brain. It's becoming more and more not working. Yeah, losing function, okay? And because of that childlikeness, a lot of times we react like they're a child. And there's a real fine line. Because, and especially for someone like me, because I have a little squeaker voice, and I just love people and animals and all that, when I get excited, oh, how are you? And you're like, I don't want to hear that. And so we have to be very mindful of that when we're working with people, and making sure that we are respectful, that we are giving dignity and that we are not treating them as the child because they are not. And it's easy to get sucked into that as the diseases progress. We're going to come back to how to respond to things this afternoon, and so we'll touch more on that. So this is a picture of the FTD brain. Somebody that has frontotemporal dementia, this is the young lady that I had, so typical ages 40 to 60. I will tell you that she was in the dining room. We have in the memory care that I was running up to 32 people. And she would strip naked, masturbate. She would eat anything that she could get. It would go into her mouth. Her profession was an accountant. She was a beautiful lady. And there was nothing to stop her at all. Because do this. This frontal lobe was broken. So she could not make the decisions that needed to be made for herself. She took care of her mother, her mother's mother, her mother's sister, her mother's other sister, and when she passed away, she has a 15 and a 16-year-old that are most likely going to be dealing with this as well. So there is a familiar gene in a lot of these, and they'll still tell you that there's not with frontotemporal dementia. So this is such a new thing, you guys, that when I tell you that you've really got to be with people that know, it's very, very important that you do, that you identify who that is. So with this, for time, I will be skipping through a couple things. You see this picture of the brain. Is vision affected with Alzheimer's and different types of dementia? How many of you say yes? Okay. When I asked earlier, what are some of the things that you think of when you hear dementia? I never ever hear vision changes. But do this. This is your occipital region of the brain, and this is in charge of your vision. It is affected by Alzheimer's. And so what I want you to do, I'm going to show you the changes of vision with the progression of Alzheimer's, okay? So we're going to start with the scuba goggle. So I want you to do this. Put on the scuba. Good. And I want you to notice what's missing around you. Yes, your peripheral vision, okay? Now, the disease is progressing. We're going to go into the mid stages of Alzheimer's. Do binoculars. Okay? Now, we're progressing further, and we're going to do monovision. So close one eye and just have one eye available. Okay? Cover your eye. Now, how much can you see? Okay? So, can I use you? Hi. Oh. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So, what just happened here? Yes, ma'am. Uh-huh. Oh. Oh. Praise God. That's a God miracle right there. Wow. So she was saying that she had a fall and wasn't able to see, but she does see now. Yeah, perfectly. That's amazing. Wow. So I apologize, CJ. That's okay. So for those of you that are like way in the back there, what just happened was she had her vision, and instead of coming directly in front of her, I came from the side, so she didn't see me coming. Okay? So for people who have Alzheimer's and they're sitting there just normal, and we don't see this, right? And we come up behind them or aside from them, we're scaring them. So I'm lucky because she didn't punch me. But that might be a response that I get. And so when we're talking about vision changes, is this not important? Have any of you had somebody with dementia that likes to steal food from the person in front of them? This happens a lot in my memory cares. And here's the thing. If you put your monovision back on, you can see the plate across from you, but you can't see the one that's right in front of you. Okay? So when we understand what's happening with the brain, does it not change the care that we're providing to those living with dementia? Okay? So vision changes is a big one, but there's more. So now we're going to look at another part of the brain. Okay, so what you see is shrinkage in the circle. So that is the hippocampus. That's the learning memory center. And again, with Alzheimer's, that's the first thing that gets affected. Can you see how significant that is? Okay. Sorry, it feels like it's skipping. Okay, here's the other one. Understanding language. Language is changing. So you're talking to me, and I don't know what you're saying. Okay? There is something called social chit-chat. Now, social chit-chat, I retain, which is, oh, hi, how are you? Oh, good, fabulous. It's that normal stuff where, you know, like on Facebook or different things, and they have the little 2-year-olds, and they're on the phone having a conversation with themselves. It's essentially that conversation that can be had, okay? But typically, it's 1 in every 4 words that goes missing, okay? So I want you to hold your hand up. Okay. What I'm going to show you is the way we receive information. What do you think is the number 1 way that we receive information? Vision, that's right, vision. Okay, so I want you to do this, vision. Okay. What's the second? Hearing. The third? Good, touch. The 4th way we get information is smell, and then taste, okay? So, if vision is most important, can you go ahead and pull up the video for the dementia experience, the 12-minute dementia experience? Thank you. So vision, if that is what we're losing, what do you think that's going to do? It shrinks your world, and isolation starts to happen. And isolation, by studies, is shown that 1 day of isolation is like smoking 18 cigarettes. It's horrible. And when we had COVID, and nobody knew what they were doing, and they isolated people in their rooms or in their homes, and they couldn't socialize, we did more damage during that time than ever. More so, honestly, I believe way more than what COVID actually did. And I lost loved ones to COVID as well. But isolation is awful because we have to stimulate the brain, and socialization is one of the best ways to actually stimulate the brain. Okay? So vision is most important. Now, I'm in a church, and so I'm going to do this very gingerly. But imagine I'm holding up my hand, and we have vision, hearing, and then touch. What happens if I don't let them see me or hear me? Bad touch. Bad touch. And so we have to make sure that before we touch somebody, they see us and they hear us, or else we are going to have a bad touch back to us. Okay? And what happens as well is that in the world, when we're providing care for dementia, if a behavior happens, so if CJ hit me, guess what I'd be going and telling the director? We have a behavior. Aggression. Let's get her some meds. We need to get her some meds because she's aggressive. But whose fault was it? Y'all, 90% of the time, it is our fault as the caregiver because we just never learned. We didn't get the tools that we needed. And we'll never be perfect. Whether we're professional, whether we're a family, we will never be perfect, and we cannot expect that of ourselves. We all have a soul and emotions that are involved in everything that we do in life. However, there's a level of accountability I'm trying to bring to the world to empower people for quality care. Now, one of the questions that I got on here was, how do you give quality life? I want you to talk at your tables for 1 minute. What do you think allows a quality life for somebody living with dementia? So for right now, I'm just going to ask for people to share. If you'll go ask, so we can get those answers. Thank you. But I think we'll do role play after lunch. I know. 15 seconds. And stop. So DJ here has a microphone, and I would like to hear from some of you willing to share. What do you think will allow for a quality life of somebody living with dementia? Who's willing to share? Thank you.
I lived with, my wife had dementia for probably several years before I realized what was going on. There is no quality of life when you're living with a person with dementia. The only quality of life was when I took her to have her hair done. You know, that was an hour of reprieve for me. That's it. And also for her, too. But other than that, there is no quality of life. I'm sorry, not for either. And
Don't be sorry.
You know, that's just how it is.
Yeah. No, I understand that. And he's talking about as well what we call caregiver burnout. I get asked the question a lot, when do we know when it's time to move our loved one out of the home? I understand we want to keep our loved ones in the home as often as we can. Don over here has something too. And so before you hit the point that you were not able to live your life freely, because it affects us all differently. But statistics show that caregivers, those providing care for their loved one, die more than 50% prior to the one they're taking care of. It's that stressful. It's that stressful on the body, on the mind, on everything. And so, again, when I talk about getting your toolkits put together, it's for your life. It isn't just because it looks good. It truly is about living life and succeeding and being able to have the quality life for you and them. And there's a lot of guilt that goes with this. A lot. There's a movie that shows an example where the husband had committed, I will never let you go. I will always take care of you in the home. But it was awful. They fought. He locked her up. He literally chained her to the bed. But he was keeping his promise. And she didn't remember who he was, so she thought she was kidnapped. And this happens. This is real life. And so we'll come back to that, and I'm so sorry for your experience, Jean. I hear your heart with this. And this is an important piece that we will talk about more at the end. But Don, you had something to share.
I think that the number one thing is interaction.
Yes. Yes, amen.
I really and true. And I really believe that it starts, they come up and say, you got Alzheimer's. Go home, stay there. You can't drive. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't do this. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And you're just looking at four walls.
Yeah.
And I have got friends that come get me, take me to meetings, take me to church, take me to classes.
Yes.
That's the kind of friends that I was lucky enough to have.
Yeah.
Interaction. And I think that, and a wife that drags me down to the deal and makes me walk 2 miles a day.
Good job, Christy.
I'm really fortunate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So I will tell you, I have the privilege of seeing them again. I think it's been maybe 15 years, truly, that we've seen one another. We went to church, Pure Heart, together many a times ago. And are you okay sharing then that he has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's specifically? Alzheimer's. And so he's going through this journey, and, you know, there are so many, like you said, walls that we hit. And part of that is because it's like you get diagnosed and then everything is taken away, but it doesn't need to be. This is where we talk about a quality of life. Okay? Now, technology allows for a whole bunch of stuff. The young lady that I showed you the picture of as well, she still drives. They drove from Florida to North Carolina. But God forbid, because she has Alzheimer's, right? But she can still do it. We want to maintain independence as long as possible. And even if the things that are being done, something as small as the dishes, and they're not looking good, and you have to go back and pull the dishes out to redo it, let them do it. It's a quality of life. Now, when we ask what gives a quality of life, I think purpose. Purpose. I want you to close your eyes for a second. So, you wake up in the morning, and you go to the kitchen table, and you're sitting at the table. And you start thinking about your day. But there's not one thing for you to do, to achieve, to enjoy. You're sitting there. When you open your eyes, I want you to really understand that there is an element that gets stolen from people's lives to where it does make sense, where we talk about so many of people that just get lost into the disease. But it doesn't have to be that way. Because when you have purpose, when you have things to do, when you have responsibilities, you feel good you've achieved it. I had knee surgery a year ago, and I wasn't able to walk for 6 weeks, and my husband did a really, really good job taking care of me for the first week of 6. It was pretty brutal. So, towards the latter phase, I managed to wheel myself in to the kitchen, and there was some can, I don't know what it was, soup or something, and I was trying to open it. And he came in, the audacity, truly, he came in and he grabbed it right out of my hands and he opened it and he set it back down with this big smile on his face. And I punched him. Y'all, I was so mad. To this day, it feels like it just happened. I couldn't believe it. It was the only thing I could do. I couldn't do anything. But for goodness sakes, I could open my own jar, even though I was struggling. But then I'd have felt even that much better because I actually achieved it. It was like the end of the world for me. And I'll never forget it. And I know God allowed me to experience that, to have a better understanding for those that we provide care for, you know. But I'm just like, he stole something from me. And so when we're going through the day, I don't care how small it is, give things to do, things to achieve. My grandfather, he was an engineer, and he liked to work with his hands, and he struggled. But he could do bubble wrap, where he could pop the bubbles on the wrap. And you think, it's such a small thing, maybe, but to him it was like, you know, the heavens were singing. It was amazing. So anybody else that wants to share about how do we create quality of life? Yes. Oh, thank you. We have to get skates on you.
Thanks. I'm part of an ukulele group in Sun City, and so I'm part of a teaching group. And so everybody in there is older, obviously. They're over 55. Many are 65, 75, 85 years old, 90. And they're just learning how to play an instrument.
Oh, I love it.
And it never dawned on them that I can do this. And so all of a sudden now they have new goals.
Yes.
Their mind is wrapped around learning something that they thought that they could never do that they are now doing, and they are part of a club where they can come in once a week and play music. And it's just wonderful to see how it affects people.
I love that. And so there's two big pieces to that. One is that it's music, and we're going to talk more about that. And the other part of that is learning something new. So how many of you do Sudoku or word puzzles? Raise your hand and keep your hand held up. Okay. How many of you play games on the phone or somewhere? Okay. So there's a variety of things that we can do. Bingo, all of that, right? But here's the kicker. If it's not something new that's challenging your brain, you are not creating new synapses. And the goal is to create new synapses, which means it has to be a challenge and something new. Something as simple as if you drive a certain way to the grocery store or home from church, try to go a different way. Something as little as that creates new synapses in the brain. And they used to say that when your synapses got broken, which connect and allow for communication in the brain, once that's broken, that they would not, you couldn't fix it and you couldn't get the cells back. The cells die, they're gone, but that is not true. They have found that is not true. So you can exercise your brain to be better. And it's really important because whether we feel like we may have dementia, whether we've been diagnosed, whether it's somebody else, significant differences can take place by doing these things, which is primarily cognitive stimulation in different domains of the brain. Whole different conversation than we can go into today. But what I want to do, so one of the things that I do with my school is that I bring people through the dementia experience. There's different types. This is one type. I'm going to have you watch a video. And it's about 12 minutes long. But I want you to see somebody's experience walking through the sensory deficits like we were talking about with sight and everything, and what the experience is like for this individual. So we'll go ahead and play that, please.
Americans live with Alzheimer's disease. It's a long, hard road, not just for those who suffer from the disease, but also for the caregivers, children tasked with caring for an increasingly dependent parent. 4 years ago, ABC had the chance to put cameras inside a Texas home as a couple took on this terrible challenge. And my co-anchor, Cynthia McFadden, has followed the family ever since. Cynthia?
Terry, one of the things we learned over these years is just how little most of us really understand about the disease itself. I thought I knew a lot about Alzheimer's, but after Blaine and I took part in an experiment simulating what it's like to have the disease, I found out I didn't. It was 12 minutes that changed my life.
I love you, Mom.
Blaine Wilson's mother, LaWanda, came to live with him 4 years ago. He'd just married his new wife, Georgia, 5 weeks earlier. Blaine soon learned it was much harder than he thought.
Oh, God. Blake! She's going to drop her car.
And later, she did. She lit fires. She wandered off. But LaWanda doesn't look sick, and she often seems fine. which makes it hard for Blaine and Georgia to understand how limited she really is. And that leads to frustration and resentment.
Just tell her to wash the clothes. I'm tired of washing. I bet you in her book she knows what to do. Are you afraid? I mean...
No, I'm not afraid. You know, I mean, it's my mother. You don't understand.
The more we watched the tapes, the more it became apparent how little Blaine and Georgia really understood what was happening to LaWanda's mind.
Do you really feel you understand the world your mother now lives in?
No.
What's going on in her head, her brain?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I need to understand that, then. I need to know what it's like.
So I told Blaine about an experiment developed by P.K. Bevel and administered by her colleague Lori Labershak. The experiment helps families and caregivers actually experience what it's like to have Alzheimer's.
I understand it's a pretty rough experience.
It needs to be experienced. If it'll help me to understand, I would love to.
I agreed to undergo the experiment with him.
Could you have a seat, please?
Our journey into another world begins here, in this bedroom, where Blaine and I are suited up with some deceptively harmless-looking devices. Goggles simulating macular degeneration, glaucoma, and cataracts, conditions that older people with Alzheimer's often have. Likewise, latex gloves are placed on our hands, and our fingers are taped to make our hands feel arthritic, clumsy, hard to bend.
Remove your shoes.
A substance is placed inside our shoes to make it harder for us to walk.
Ooh, that is uncomfortable.
And on our heads, they place earphones, which emit an incessant jabbering, a clamor of noise that some Alzheimer's patients say is constant.
Individuals with dementia say, we're hearing all this stuff and they can't turn it off.
Then we're each given 5 tasks to perform, and only 12 minutes to accomplish them.
I'd like you to find the tie and put it on.
I can't hear you.
Blaine has a hard time concentrating from the start.
Your time begins now.
As he enters, Blaine is immediately disoriented. He staggers, reminding us of the way his mother looked on our tapes. Blaine tries to accomplish his first task, clearing the dishes off the table. But when he goes to put them away, he can't find the kitchen. So he gives up.
Well, I don't know where to put them.
Blaine finally finds the kitchen, but he can't remember why he's there. And again, the similarities to his mother were astounding.
She would open the cabinets, and then she would shut them. Mother, what are you doing? Nothing?
But Blaine is doing a lot better than I am.
What the heck is this?
It's only about 2 minutes into the experiment, and the noise from the headset is driving me crazy.
God! So annoying!
As I try to accomplish my first task, find a white sweater, I work myself into a frenzy.
White sweater.
Remember, what I'm hearing is this.
No.
And believe me, it drives everything else out of your head.
Annoyed!
This is tough. I felt confused, kind of panicky. If I had to go through very much of that, I just might go crazy.
All right, that's not a sweater. That's not a white sweater.
And you do understand why people start talking to themselves.
This is not a white sweater.
I was trying to organize my mind by saying, okay.
Okay. Okay, all right, all right, all right. Not a white sweater. Not there. I don't know about that.
You're doing great.
PK was in the room, and at one point when I sat down in frustration on the sofa, and she said, you're doing great.
Why don't you start with finishing setting the table?
And she told me what else I was supposed to do. I'll remember that.
The reinforcement.
Yeah, because you feel so alone. And you feel so frustrated, and there's no, you don't know what you're supposed to do, and it's so dark.
Reluctantly, I go back into the kitchen to try to find the plates.
Glasses. How long have I been doing this? About 20 hours? I'm not doing great. I'm not doing great.
And once again, I get distracted and go looking for that white sweater.
This looks good enough. This is like a, okay, it's not exactly a sweater. All right, I'll put it over my shoulders.
And I end up looking a little eccentric.
Her son's going to say, Mama, you can't go out like that.
Right.
You're getting a little off here.
God.
In the meantime, Blaine has moved on to the bedroom, where he's supposed to match 6 pairs of socks.
The hell? I don't know, man.
Instead, he starts folding everything in sight.
I swear, man, this is crazy.
By now, Blaine seems to have forgotten his list of chores. He was supposed to have found this tie, for example, and put it on. Instead, he folds it along with everything else.
Shoot.
It reminded us of the time Blaine's mother set out to cook something for lunch, then got distracted washing dishes, and didn't remember until the pot was burning.
Plates!
After 12 excruciating minutes, the experiment was over.
I give up.
Blaine, your time is up.
Huh?
Your time is up.
Oh, shoot.
What an unpleasant experience.
Damn.
Yeah.
I couldn't do anything.
Blaine was visibly shaken.
Yeah, what a way to try and get through each day. And kind of scary.
In what way?
Almost like panic.
For both of us, new insights.
It's a deep sense of confusion.
The thing that shocks me the most is that I couldn't remember 5 simple instructions.
I couldn't imagine living like that.
It's life-altering.
They need your help. They need your understanding.
Amen. Despite the experiment, Cynthia reports that stress was too much. LaWanda is living with her sister and has had almost no contact with her son. Good luck to them.
Experience with that process, and boy, what a learning experience. And if you ever get the opportunity to do that, do so. But now, just before lunch, we're going to have a couple of our sponsors to come forward to share their resources and some information, and then of course you'll have some more time to where you can visit their tables. But we would like Terry's Health Services, Richard, and Sante and Aleka Sally Beckman to come forward. Okay, so Richard, take my forward. Terry's Health Services.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having Terry's Health here today. Just going to give you a little oversight on what Terry's Health does. We're an integrated, sorry, didn't want to be too loud. There you go. I want to sing now. I won't do it, trust me, you won't enjoy it. We're an integrated healthcare company. When I first started with Terry's, I didn't know what that meant. I came from the addiction side of medical services. Integrated healthcare is bringing all the outpatient type of services into one building or one company. So we do primary care, like your regular doctor visits, those type of things. We also do counseling. We're trauma-based counseling, where we do EMDR and Santray. EMDR is what they're using for the soldiers that come home, PTSD, those type of things. It's a way to get both sides of the brains to fully think about a traumatic event and not have an effect on your body or your mind, way of dealing with it to ease. Doesn't take it away, but it makes it easier to move through your life with those traumatic events in your mind. Santray is another way of people being able to converse with the therapist. It's an actual sand tray, and they create scenes with little characters or buildings, and it gives an insight to the therapist of what's going on with the patient and a way to think of ways to help with the traumatic events. We also do medication management, so any medications you're on, whether it be for substance abuse or daily medical needs, we can manage those with you. That way you're not seeing multiple doctors, you're doing that in one location. And we also do psychiatric services, so anything psychiatric that you may need, we can handle through Terry's Health. So you're not traveling all over the valley to different doctors, different type of things, getting prescribed for you and nobody knows what's really going on. I'm sure we've all had that happen before. One last thing we do, which probably doesn't pertain to you, but I'll mention it just in case you know anybody. We go into facilities like women's shelters, substance abuse facilities, school districts. We're going into Peoria Unified School District, and we're going to do the counseling for them there because they have a need for that. So we'll be providing that, or primary cares and then women's shelters and things like that. So we take all insurances. We take Access, Medicare, Medicaid, TRICARE, and all commercial. And if you have an insurance that we don't take, we will go out and get authorized to take it. So that's what we've been doing. We're pretty new. We've been around 5 years, but I think you'll see a lot more of integrated healthcare companies popping up around because it's kind of a smarter way to do that for your medical care and your mental care. So that is all I have. I'll be back at my table over there. If you have any questions for me, please just come by and see me, take some of our information. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, next, Sante and Aleka, and that's Sally Beckman, RN.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having us. We've really enjoyed this. I've been a nurse for 42 years, and I've seen a lot of this, but, you know, you kind of forget. So bringing back some of those patients with the dementia, their encounters really brought some eventful memories back for me. I remember one patient when I was doing private duty just kept trying to kick me. And so I happened to ask the family, do I look like somebody he didn't like? Or, yeah, you look like his aunt, and he didn't like her. And I said, I'm going to bow out of taking care of your dad because this is so agitating to him. But I never forgot it. And we just really need to remember that everybody has worth and dignity, and they deserve that. So I've been involved with the Alzheimer's Association and a lot of the dementia groups. And if you have a need or a wish to volunteer or learn more, there's a lot of resources out there for you. So I represent Sante and Aleka. Does anybody know what post-acute services are? What's post-acute? Right, the minute you leave the hospital. So post-acute has a number of services, and we at Sante and Aleka have all those post-acute services. So that's outpatient rehab, that's home health, that's hospice, all kinds of opportunities to continue your journey to wellness once you leave the hospital. So we have Sante of Surprise here in the Valley. A lot of people know about them, and that's our sister company. So Aleka is home health and hospice. I am the hospice administrator, and we do a lot with dementia patients, and that may not be their life-limiting illness, but as you guys know, when one body system is broken down, it can exacerbate dementia. And so we do a lot with that, with behavior control, agitation. It comes up a lot, so we've got some really good expertise with that. We do have a relationship with Orchard Point, and we provide services inside that building. And I just wanted to open the floor and ask, are there any questions about Alzheimer's dementia in hospice? Anybody? What? We provide palliative and hospice and home health. So home is where the patient calls home. This care can be provided in a group home, an assisted living, their own home, their sister's home. So we provide hospice care, and like I said, it may not be their life-limiting illness. They can be diagnosed with COPD, but they also have dementia. It just comes into play all the time. With Alzheimer's dementia, it does require specialized training because if that's their primary diagnosis, it's significant. And so we provide a lot of training to our staff, but our families as well, with just getting to know what it looks like. And videos like this are very, very helpful. I can tell you that my father died of Alzheimer's. I have a brother who's an astronaut. He still couldn't figure it out. He thought my dad was faking it and manipulating him. Being a very intelligent person, it didn't click with him until he drove down and saw the behaviors and got to know my dad wasn't faking it. He had Alzheimer's dementia. So I think families need a lot of education, and we really like to provide that because we want to provide a great end-of-life experience for both the patient and the families and caregivers.
And I'd like to just add one thing because, we hear about hospice, and it's kind of a bad word that we're used to from the past. Palliative care is an amazing, amazing thing. And I just want you to know, as a professional and as a family member, I bring palliative care on as early as I can because we're talking about the team. We're talking about being able to have support, and that's what it does for us. It just allows us to have that much more, eyes on the situation, medical attention, and attention for our heart. And so I am a huge advocate for palliative care, building those relationships leading into when that time comes for hospice, because the one thing I do know in the world is that every one of us at some point will pass on, right? That's the one guaranteed thing. But we can do it with grace and beauty, and that's what hospice and the palliative care program allows for when we're talking about that quality of life. So I don't want you to be afraid of it, okay?
And I will always explain chaplaincy in hospice. For some reason, Congress got that right. In their wisdom, they did create inside the hospice palliative hospice model of care, there is a chaplaincy benefit. So they did recognize their spiritual grieving and issues that really hang up some people to have peace at end of life. So chaplaincy is also a big part.
Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. You will be hearing from some of the other sponsors, but I just want to give a shout out to the sponsors. They are helping us to provide your lunch today. So if you see one of the sponsors, you might thank them for the lunch today. We have a great lunch prepared, and thank you, volunteers, for helping out. There's 3 different kinds of sandwiches. We have ham, turkey, beef, and turkey. We have chips, fruit, dessert. So we're not going to do any organized system here. There's 2 lines. Yeah, go for it. There's going to be 1 line. Okay, 1 line. I'm sorry. So just get up and move, or if you want to go visit the tables or whatever, but enjoy your lunch, and we'll be back later.